Hi everyone, I want to cover the switch statement in JavaScript in this video. So what I have here on the screen is javascript.info/switch. Switch statement is great if you want to check if a variable contains one of possible or many possible values. So we have here a syntax of the switch statement. So we have the word switch, the keyword switch, and then in parentheses the variable that has a value that we want to inspect or test. Inside that block, or between these curly braces, then we have the case statement. So we put case followed by the first value that we want to check um, if it's there in that variable, and then that's followed by a series of cases depending on the number of values you want to check for. You may have several within your switch block. And then towards the end, this part is optional where it says default. That part is optional. You may have that. It's sort of like the equivalent of else in the case of if statements. Now, the default is executed, whatever code you have here is executed if none of these values that you have in the cases exists or inside or is found inside the variable. So nevertheless, so that's the basic structure of your switch statement, and you'll see also that there's a break keyword inserted towards the end of each case. And in fact, towards the end of the default, though it's pretty optional in this case. Now the break tells the browser to break away from that block or sort of get out of that block. So in other words, say if that variable has this value over here, then what's going to happen is it's going to execute the statements. The browser will execute the statements, and once the browser encounters the break, that will make the browser leave this block. So from this line, it's going to jump straight to the end of the switch statement. Okay, and then so on and so forth. And then we also have here the JavaScript switch statement reference from W3 schools. Okay, and you will also find some information about the switch statement in the John Duckett book, JavaScript and jQuery, page, or I should say pages 164 through 165. So what I'd like to do right now is cover an example. So to do that, I'm gonna put this away for the meantime, and I have here brackets, and I've just opened brackets, and I have a folder also on my desktop. It's called demo. So what I'm gonna do is, because I'm using brackets, I have sort of kind of to do this, and I'm gonna click over here. It says getting started, or you can also click on file, open folder. Nevertheless, I'm gonna use this, click open folder, and I'm gonna select the desktop because that's where my demo folder is, and I'm gonna select the demo folder, click open, and that pretty much points brackets to my demo folder. So let me just make this a lot larger. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, click File New, create a web page, and I'm going to save this, though it's empty. I'm in the Mac, so I'm going to press Command S or click File Save. If you're using Windows, you can press Control S. And of course, you may use any text editor or page editor you want. So I'm saving it as example01.html. Not that that matters, but I just want to name it like that. And I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And let me hit the Command plus several times just to make that big enough for you guys to see. Okay, so the usual doc type, HTML, HTML tag, and the head, body. Now you may also choose to save this. Just not put that meta tag, so I'm just going to go straight to title and pretty much be done with that. All right, so put a title here. I'll call this example 1. Or maybe I should come up with something else. I'm going to call this switch statement example 1. Okay. So, and I'm going to go, and let me just make that a little bit bigger. I'm going to go here, add a script tag, and as usual, we don't need the type or nor the src. Okay. We don't use the type anymore, thanks to HTML5. And I'm not using the src because I'm not planning to put my JavaScript code in an external file. So to begin, I'm going to create a variable. It's going to put here, let's say, uh, course code. Okay. And I'm going to use the switch statement. Oh, sorry. Before that, we want to ask the user using the prompt statement to enter the course code. So the course code, so we're going to use something like WP-HTML, or it could be DMA110 or SOC105. So it's that unique number, unique code that's given to every course, pretty much in a lot of schools. All right, so that's that. And what I'm going to do is add the switch statement. Switch course code, because I want to investigate what's inside that course code variable. Okay, so put here case. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of the places where I work, and they have some course codes there. So for example, there's a course code that says WP HTML. Okay. So I want to say if the user typed that, I want to say, well, that's the HTML class. Okay, so what I'm going to do is create a variable here. Say var message, because I want to say message. No. Message equals HTML. Okay, so that's that. And what I'm going to do is, usually we put a break statement, and I'll explain in a little bit as to why. And I'm going to create another example just for that, actually a modified version of this. Okay, so I'm going to put another case because I want to investigate another potential value of that variable. So case, let's see, PR Java. I think brackets auto-formatted my quotes. All right, so I'm going to say message equals Java, okay, the Java language, not JavaScript, and I'm going to put a break. Okay. So I'm actually in my other screen, I'm referring to these course codes. So just in case you're wondering where I'm pulling these from, these are course codes from an institution I teach. So, and I'm going to put here case. Let's try strqe, and that would be the SQL class. Okay, let's put a break. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to put the default block, as you might have seen earlier in JavaScript.info. They have a default section. Okay, so we'll put that on hold for now. So I'm going to go ahead and so now that I'm done typing my switch statement, I'm going to go ahead and put here alert message. Save that. Okay, and I can use the live preview, but I can also use show in Finder and just double click the file. Either ways, as long as you can preview the web page, that's all that matters. So I'm gonna go click, type WP HTML, all lowercase letters. Click OK, and there you go, it says HTML. And I'm gonna refresh that just to test it once more. This time I'm gonna put PR Java. That should display the Java class, the name of the Java course, and then it says Java. That's great. Now, the problem, of course, is when I refresh that and I type the course code is not one of those that I typed in my code. So let's say PHP undefined. Okay, that's because I did not have any case statement to handle that value. So what I'm going to do here, and this should illustrate the purpose of that default. And this is why I also said in the beginning that it's like the else statement the else block rather in an if statement. So you can say default. You don't need a value over here. No, just put the word default. Put a colon, not semicolon, a colon, and you go and type whatever code you need the browser to execute. should none of these values exist in that variable. Okay, so default colon message equals um, course unknown. Okay, let's say that's what I want to tell the user. The break is unnecessary here, but I'm just going to go ahead and put one just for the sake of having one to be consistent with the rest of them. Okay, so let me save that. I pressed Command S. I'm going to go click Live Preview. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. All right, so it opens in the browser. So my code is running. Enter the course code, WP-HTML. Perfect, it runs. You know, it says HTML. I'm going to refresh this. And this time I'm going to put PHP, which is not one of those course codes. Okay, so click OK. Course unknown. All right, so that is wonderful. That's exactly how I want it. So let me go back to the example. Let me close some of these windows just to have a clean slate over here. All right. Now, what's the purpose of the break statement? So what I'm going to do here is uh, take away this break statement. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and save this. All right, and I'm going to go and show this in Finder. Just want to use a simpler version of testing that page. Not that that matters, but I'm going to go enter the course code. So I'm going to put here WP-HTML. Click OK. It says HTML, and I close this. All right. So far so good. Now I'm going to refresh this, and this time let's test the PR Java course code. I'm going to go click OK. It says SQL, and it closes. Okay, so what's going on? Why did it say, now when I type the course code PR Java, which should actually yield the course description or the message that says Java, why does it say SQL even with this PR Java course code? Okay, so I see right there it's SQL. Now the reason for that is this. So imagine the computer, or the browser in this case, sees these variables and remembers them. And this statement pretty much tells the browser to store whatever the user enters in the prompt window inside the course code variable. From there, the browser encounters a switch statement where it's going to investigate, so to speak, what's inside that variable. Now, let's assume that the user entered PR Java. All right. Now, if the user entered that, what's going to happen here is the browser will see this, and the browser will say, hey, it's not, course code does not contain WP-HTML. So what it's going to do is jump to the next case and investigate if that value here is what's inside this variable. Now, because our assumption is the user entered PR Java, so the browser will say, yep, that's what's inside the variable, PR Java. So it's going to go in here, run the statement, and because there's no break statement, it's going to continue. Rather than get out of the switch statement, it's going to continue to the next case. It says case strqe. And then it's going to run the statement, which effectively overwrites what this did. So when the browser entered this section of the switch statement, effectively that puts the string Java inside the variable message. But because there's no break statement, that causes the browser to jump to the next case. And even if the variable course code does not contain strqe, the browser will move on and run the statements in the other case block or case section. So what this does is effectively replace what the Java that's in message from earlier with SQL, with a string that contains SQL. And that then causes the browser to encounter the break statement, from which the browser jumps to the end of the switch statement and alerts the contents of the message variable. So that's why we are seeing SQL rather than Java. Now you might say, well, there seems to be no point in removing the break, but actually there are cases when you probably want to remove or you want to sort of change the logic a little bit by removing the break statement. In this case, in this example, it makes sense to put the break statement. So there you go. For this example, I want to create a script that illustrates, I guess, a creative way of using the switch statement, also involving in some places not using the break statement. So what I'm going to do is create a variable. I should say variables, starting with, uh, let's say, course code. Right? And I'm also going to create a variable called message. So for course code, we're going to ask the user enter course code. And what I'm going to do is initialize that variable message to have an empty string. It's essentially a string with no characters in it. Just the two double quotes, one after the other, and that's about it. Okay? Now there's a reason why I want the variable to have an initial value, hence the term initialization. And you'll see that shortly. Okay, so I'm gonna put a switch statement here that says switch course code, and we have the curly braces or the block. Now, excuse me. So let's see. Case. Suppose the user entered a course code GDINTDRE, which is in one of the places I work. Um, this is the course code for an Introduction to Dreamweaver class. The class actually covers quite a few topics. So what I'm going to do here is going to say message equals, I'm going to put here Dreamweaver. But I'm also going to put, okay, let's put a space. So message break, actually no break here. I'm about to show you why. So I'm going to put another case instead, and this time it's WP-HTML, where we get to cover CSS, or I should say HTML and introductory CSS. Put a break here, and I'm going to create another, sorry, I'm going to create another case. Let's just put ADODREA, which is Advanced Dreamweaver. I'm going to put a message, Advanced Level Dreamweaver break, default message unknown course. Put a break. And finally, towards the end, I'm going to alert, oops, I'm going to alert the message. In other words, display the message variable, contents of message variable in the alert window. Now, let me revisit this part here, because what's going to happen is when the user enters this course code, it's going to set this variable to contain the word Dreamweaver space. Okay, and in fact, there's a reason why I put a space there, because now that I do not have a break statement, what's going to happen is from this line, the browser will jump to the other case. In fact, it won't actually compare what's in this variable with that string, but rather what it's going to do is it's going to go over here in this line and make that variable message contain the string. Now I don't want that, because what I want to do is I want to keep the word Dreamweaver, but instead I want to add on to that Dreamweaver. I want to add this to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put here message equals message plus, okay, and I'm going to put a comma. Okay, and in fact, maybe I should get rid of the space here. So I'm going to put a comma here, space, HTML introductory CSS. Okay. The only problem is if with this format, the message when the user enters WP-HTML is it's going to be comma space HTML introductory CSS. So maybe it's a bad idea to put that there. All right. So sorry for keep on changing my mind here, because what I want to do is display this properly. So let's put the comma and a space up here, because anyway, when the user enters this course code, I want it to show this along with the introductory HTML introductory CSS. So what's going to happen? Let's backtrack a little bit. So let's say the user entered this course code. So the browser will run this line, and then from this line, the browser will jump to this line. Now this line says this actually means this is what's called in computer science as an accumulator. In other words, essentially, we are adding what's currently in this variable. We're concatenating it or combining it with this string. And the result of combining these two is saved in the same message variable that we used in the whole operation. So in other words, we're overwriting what's in the message with the result of this. So uh, in effect, that becomes Dreamweaver, comma space plus HTML and introductory CSS. That's the message should the user enter GDINTDRE as the course code. Now, if the user entered WP-HTML, what's going to happen? Well, it's still going to combine the current value of message with a string, but if the user entered WP-HTML, the current value by then of message would have been an empty string. So this would have been empty string plus HTML and introductory CSS. Okay. So and as a result, the message will be just HTML and introductory CSS, which is perfect because that's what this course is about. So with that, I'm gonna save this. Let me see. I just want to make sure I have everything right. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this and switch over to live preview. Click that little lightning bolt there. Okay, so course code is say WP-HTML, and that we see HTML and introductory CSS. So that's perfect. Now let's refresh this, and I'm gonna go and enter GDINTDRE. Click OK. Dreamweaver, comma HTML introductory CSS. So by not putting the break statement, okay, let me close this one. By not putting the break statement after this line, I was able to reuse the value or whatever I did in the previous case, I was able to reuse it in the next case, in the subsequent case. Now, if I didn't get rid of this break, I mean, well, rather I should say, if I got rid of that break statement, it would have gone on and continued further down. But I didn't want that, so that's why I put a break statement here. The same case with the ADODREA, the Advanced Level Dreamweaver. I didn't want it to continue to the default section, so that's why I put a break. So in a way, the switch statement does require the break statement unless you want something creative done with your logic, like in this case. But otherwise, you're going to need that break statement in your switch.